Is what we see on TV real? I'm Ellie, someone who knows nothing about law enforcement.
And I'm Steve, a former police detective.
Join me as we check out policing representation.
Okay, the next one we're looking at is The Bill, which I presume that
Oh,
you
The
know
Bill.
about. Yeah.
Classic. Inspired me to join the police. All of my early police training came from watching 90s episodes of The Bill. I'm hoping this is an early Bill, but I suspect it's not. I suspect you're going to show me a more contemporary Bill. But what we used to say, I was in the Met, and I joined the Met in the very late 90s, early 2000s, and we always did say that many elements of the Bill were about as close to being sort of accurate as you were likely to get on TV. That's not to say they were accurate. It's just to say that they weren't miles away. And a lot of the sort of patter and the conversations and stuff were quite sort of realistic and well done. But we'll see. Let's see what you've got to show me.
Over there. I hear our main suspect's turned herself in.
That's okay. I can deal with this if you're busy with your CID friends.
No, believe me, I'm far happier here.
Oh, didn't know you cared. Megla Aberdeen, thanks for coming in.
Did I have a choice? Better be good. Or I'm gonna
Nice.
sue you for wrongful arrest.
Well, we haven't arrested you yet.
Okay, racial harassment then. Has that pig Ronnie been on at you?
You were identified as being at the scene of a crime. We just need to establish the facts.
Yeah? Or when do you lot bother about facts?
Such cynicism in one so young. I like her.
You should check that Ronnie out instead of hassling me.
We already have. All above board and legit. Whereas you, 2 counts of shoplifting, 1 of criminal damage.
That wasn't my fault.
There's another one for counterfeiting CDs. Should we continue?
So I'm guilty of everything that happens around here then, am I?
Well, no one's saying that.
So what is it then? My face doesn't fit? The colour of my skin? What?
I might look like a thug, but I don't do racism. You see, it's zero tolerance here. Should we start again? Right, from the beginning, please.
I was in the shop and he started winding me up, as usual.
How do you mean?
He waits till there's no one there. Then he starts with his snidey, racist remarks. About me, my parents. They won't shop there no more.
We get that he's not going to win any medals for interracial harmony, but why fuel his prejudice by stealing from him?
Just got to me. Anyway.
Is this just a shoplifting? Is this all this is?
The beers back.
Gave?
Okay. I gave the beers back. At speed.
Then you stole from him anyway.
No, I didn't.
How about the money from the till, Megla?
What money? I didn't take any stinking money.
Hold on, the plot's thickening here. Right, so she's waiting in the front office of the police station somehow. They turn up. This is getting on a bit because they've all got the old woolly jumpers on. I remember those. So they've got the woolly jumpers on, and they've got the classic police station blue window frames that are so beloved of UK policing. So they've met her. She's slumping around on a chair, and then they take her through and into custody. I don't know if they've arrested her or what they've done, but they've taken her through to talk to her. Ostensibly, it seems like they're going to talk to her about what she thinks is stealing from a shop.
I think what's happened is that there's a load of money that's gone missing from the shop's till. She was in the shop at some point around that sort of time where she took some beer, like a 6-pack, I guess, and like returned it at force. So chucked it at the shop owner. And they think that because she did that, she also stole the money from the till.
So clearly at the start of this, she doesn't know what evidence they've got against her, because she just seems to think it's about the sort of half theft of and then returning of some beer. It would appear from her responses. But they know there's more to this than that. But they're kind of dripping this information out to her. They're looking a little bit confused about it, but they're dripping the information out to her. And that's okay. What's a little bit odd about this is when people are arrested or interviewed for something, they tend to be told what they're being interviewed about. So it would be reasonable for the officers to hold back all the information. You don't have to give her all the information about what they know, because it's perfectly reasonable to allow her to explain or refuse to explain or whatever what she's doing. What's a little bit odd would be if they're investigating one offence, but they've only sort of told her about another one, because that would be a little bit unusual. What is always unusual is the behaviour of the solicitor. I'm always amazed by the behaviour of solicitors in some of these cop shows, because the whole idea of a solicitor, a solicitor will often say at the start of an interview, my role is to advise my client and protect my client's rights and stuff like that. And quite often they just sit there and kind of nod. And in this sort of circumstance, what you'd expect the solicitor to say is, hold on, I just want to have a word with my client. Officer, this was not disclosed to me that all these other things took place. So that would be a little bit weird. So they all seem to be a little bit at cross purposes here. She thinks she knows why she's there. They seem to think that she knows why she's there. The solicitor doesn't know why they're there. But there's always somebody to stick in a seat, isn't it? So you just stick another person in there.
He's just not really paying attention.
Well, he's not. He looks bored. Having said that, I've been done hundreds of interviews with solicitors that look bored as well. He's a legal aid solicitor. He's probably not even a solicitor. He's just a legal rep, and he probably knows she's guilty. So he's sort of sat there, not really sort of paying too much attention. But it's all a little bit odd, this one, because she thinks she's there for one purpose. They think that she's there for another, and you wouldn't normally get something like that if you'd conducted the interview properly, because she would have been told what this is all about. Not really sure what the sergeant's doing in there. Rare that sergeants spend the time interviewing people, because sergeants are busy overseeing teams of constables doing their job. So I don't know if he's just supervising that female officer because she's sort of new or something like that. It's kind of unusual to get sergeants doing stuff like that.
So at the start she said something about how she was going to do them for wrongful arrest or something.
Yeah, that's just the sort of crap people say. That's just sort of nonsense of people's. Well, the police can be sued for essentially arresting people for when they didn't have reason to do it. But it's normally just a load of old nonsense that people say, because the police have got if they've got reasonable grounds to suspect a person's committing an offence, and they've got a reason why they need to be arrested. One of them is to interview or something like that, then that's not getting anywhere. I think this will sue you for wrongful arrest normally arises out of police officers not properly thinking about what they're doing, not having a crime there in the first place, or sort of acting hastily, and in circumstances where they think, we've done an investigation, we think this girl's involved in it, and we need to interview her for it, then that's kind of appears to be quite reasonable. Even if she's ultimately found not to have done anything, it's still reasonable. What would be unreasonable if they just run out in the street and just grab somebody walking past? Well, why do they think that person's involved? And if they can say, look, I reasonably suspected this person was involved, then they've got a crime to investigate and somebody that needs to be spoken to. So it's reasonable. So it's the sort of thing that people just say because they see it on TV.
I guess they open with sort of just going through her like rap sheet. I guess that kind of, I can sort of see where she's coming from, because they sit down and go, oh, you've done shoplifting and you've done this and you've done that. And it's like, what's that got to do with what you've brought her in for?
So you're actually allowed to talk about people's previous convictions during an interview, but that's not how you train it. You're not supposed to do it at the start. Previous convictions come in to when we talk about something called bad character. And bad character is essentially when somebody says, I didn't do it because I'm not the sort of person that would do this. You've got the wrong person. I'm a law-abiding citizen. At that point, it opens what we call one of the gateways into talking about bad character. So somebody props themselves up as being of good character, then it allows the investigation and ultimately the courts to then say, well, you're not of good character because actually you've been caught doing this. But what you do is you don't do it at the start of the interview, you do it at the end. So you want to know whether or not they did it, because to an extent, if they weren't there and they didn't do it, it's irrelevant what their previous history is. But it makes better TV, doesn't it, for the cops to be there going, yeah, you're a generally disreputable kind of character. So therefore, even if you didn't do this, you probably did something else. Tends to be the inference.
Yeah, it sets up a nice bit of characterization. So the audience definitely knows that she's done something.
Yeah, and then so when she's all like, that wasn't me, you're all racist kind of thing, they're going, yeah, well, maybe they are, but you've clearly done something, love. It seems to be the kind of implication of how of why they're bringing this up, why it's put in at the start.
They also don't seem to care very much about her throwing the beer at the shopkeeper. That was really brushed over as irrelevant compared to the money going missing. But I feel like that's quite important. If someone chucks a thing of beer at me, that could be painful.
let's face it, they might not be able to prove that she's done the theft of the money, and possibly she hasn't done the theft of the money, but she looks like she's committed some sort of offence. Then it looks like she's ready to admit it, and she has admitted it. So
Yeah.
it's a shame that they're not exploring that, because when all the other things fall away, and it turns out that she hasn't, in fact, stolen the money, it doesn't sound like she's been particularly pleasant to the shopkeeper, and it sounds like she might have committed some sort of assault. Again, we don't know the circumstances, whether, to what extent she's chucked it back at him, but you might as well go for a bird in the hand. She said that she's done it. Well, tell us about that.
Yeah.
Bit old school. If we can't get you for this, we'll get you for something else.
Well, I guess if you go into the police interview and go, right, well, I haven't done that crime, but I've done this other crime, you kind of get what's coming to you.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Yeah, and of course, the solicitor, normally, if you start admitting to stuff that you're not there for, the solicitor will kind of nudge you and tell you, I'd advise you to keep quiet, because let's face it, she doesn't have to say anything. They'll have told her at the start of this interview that she doesn't have to say anything, and she's just choosing to talk. And when we could do a whole discussion about the legal advice that she's likely to have had, because the police officers would have had to tell the solicitor about what she's here to be interviewed about, and the solicitor at that point would have spoken to her to try and understand her side of the story before the solicitor then decided how to advise her. Because if she then said to the solicitor, yeah, I did it, the solicitor can only recommend one of two things. One, that she tells the complete truth and admits to what she said, admits to what she's done because she's told the solicitor that she's done it, or the solicitor can advise her to make no comment. What can't happen is that she then comes up with a story in the middle that's neither an admission or is in fact a lie. At that point, the solicitor would have to stand up and leave.
Oh, so you'd know that they're lying against the solicitor's advice, because the solicitor would be like, I'm out of here, and you go, well, why's that happened?
Yeah, well, and quite often this happens relatively frequently. Or it certainly used to, that the solicitor would say, I'd advise you to make no comment, because the solicitor can't be involved with misleading the court. So if the defendant says, I didn't do it, they've got the wrong person, this is my story, then the solicitor's advice can be, well, tell the officers your story. If the suspect says, I did it, but I'm going to lie to the police, the solicitor has to, as per their professional code of conduct, say, you've either got to say nothing, or you've got to tell the truth. My advice would be to say nothing. But if they start telling lies and the solicitor knows it's lies because the suspect's told them, then the solicitor can't represent them anymore. So quite often this happens to investigators, that you find the solicitor leaving. They'll not tell you why they're leaving. They can't tell you why they're leaving because they've still got a professional obligation to their client. But you can pretty much tell when someone's if the solicitor gets up and leaves because the suspect's telling a version of events, then you kind of know that the solicitor knows that it's not true. Nothing you can do with that. No court, nobody's going to get convicted off the back of that, because.
Okay, but so if you had me arrested and you were interviewing me and said, where were you last night at 8 p.m, and I didn't say anything, and then I got to court and I said, oh, I was at my mate's house at 8 p.m, here they are, they'll tell you, you'll be like, you wouldn't have had to go to court if you just said this at the start, so why didn't you? Absolutely.
So what would happen in those circumstances, the prosecution would invite the court to look at this and say, how truthful is this? Because this person had the ability to tell the officers at the time what was going on and chose not to, and is coming up with this now. So it would invite the court to say, you might choose not to believe this person. But you don't have to say anything.